Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich, and this is your morning daily dose of F1 news. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Honda and teams approaching them about their return. We've also got Lewis Hamilton speaking about what he would save from last year's Mercedes car. And Aston Martin have got to make a choice about what driver they're going to put in their car for testing because of Lance Stroll becoming injured. But we also have a bit of breaking news about Mercedes, maybe breaking news that I didn't have time to change everything about this stream. So stay tuned. We're going to be sharing and talking about something with Mercedes if you're a Mercedes fan later on in the stream. So please do hang around for that. But until then, please do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, guys. First of all, I've got a picture of Red Bull, but this is actually about Honda and their involvement within Formula One from 2026. And it's been said that 4 teams, including McLaren, have approached Honda about their return to Formula One and wanting to potentially use their power units from 2026. I think it's really important to note right now that this isn't a complete return to Formula One for Honda. This is sort of a signal of intent that they are signed on with the intent of coming back to Formula One, but this isn't a concrete decision on returning to Formula One. No actual decision has been made about that. It's just sort of intent. And Honda Racing Corporation President Koji Watanabe has said, "We like the path opened by Formula One towards electrification and the erasure of the carbon footprint by 2030. So we've agreed to sign up for 2026." And this isn't saying Formula One's going to become Formula E. This is what Honda actually said when they left previously, that they were going to concentrate company-wide on a more green approach to what they do with sort of domestically and publicly available vehicles and everything. And Formula One didn't align with that at the time, but going more carbon neutral and becoming more green, if you like, it aligns with Honda now. So they're like, okay, we might have an avenue back in. He continues to say, "Now we'll keep an eye on the competition. We will watch the regulations closely to see if it continues on this path, and then we will decide." So I think it's been reported somewhat incorrectly generally in saying that Honda are coming back to Formula One. I think while other partnerships like Ford and Red Bull, that is signed sealed, others, it's more of a signal of intent that they would be back. Now, they have said that they got advance notice about Ford and Red Bull partnering up as well. He said, "Until 2026, we'll be with Red Bull and we want to win the World Championship until 2025. From then on, Red Bull will partner with Ford and we're not in a position to comment. But it is not a failure. We don't see it that way. We were in contact with Red Bull. Communication was constant and many topics were discussed. But it was decided that we would not continue beyond 2026. It's as simple as that. They made their decision. Red Bull is not in F1 to make friends." And when talking about other teams contacting Honda, they've said, "We've received many offers from current Formula One teams." And that's it, basically. So at the moment from Honda, it's a signal of intent that they want to come back into the sport. They're going to wait until the 2026 regulations are fully formed before making a full decision. I think really Honda have shown what they're capable of. I honestly always thought they'd be capable of it once they returned. I think it just showed the difficulty of Formula One in the modern era, that you can't just come into the sport and be successful. And I think if they return under new regs in 2026, they'll be successful again. It's that they are one of those corporations, aren't they? Basically, they will be successful. It just is what it is. So the second bit of news is to do with Lewis Hamilton. Now, it's only a brief one, but he's been talking about the old car, last year's car, and what he would save from it. And at the launch of the W14, he was talking about the W13 and said, the only thing I would want to keep, I mean, our long run pace was good last year. Our pace was always strong, so I would say that's the only element I'd want to carry on into this season. But then he said, and also reliability. So there's two things, reliability and long run pace. But then he said, but all the other stuff, we want to reinvent, redesign, and hopefully see a more efficient car. So Lewis Hamilton has basically said, put last year's car in the bin. We want to see the reliability. We want to see some long-run pace. But everything else about that car, put it in the bin. Now, we have more Mercedes news coming up. Please do hang around, guys. It would have been the title story, what I'm going to talk about. But it was literally 2 minutes before I went live that an article appeared about it. But Lewis Hamilton on the W13 basically saying, mate, just scrap it. Long run pace was good and the reliability was right on, but everything else, which really isn't, I mean, it's mad because what did they end up? Mercedes last season? Third? With a third last season. Imagine how bad the cars behind the Mercedes are. If Lewis Hamilton is saying, put that in the bin, basically, how bad is the Haas or the Williams compared? You know, they must be so bad for the drivers to drive back there on the grid. It just shows you, doesn't it? But I suppose Lewis Hamilton's coming off the back of having some of the most dominant cars, or well, yeah, dominant cars Formula One scene. That right? They were really, really good. So I just find it an interesting thing. Now, this is actually the title story, and I'm flying through this, actually. I've just realised. But this is actually the title story, and I wanted to do a poll on this, but I have changed the final story. I want to do a poll on this. Obviously, Aston Martin have got to have a decision. They've got to make a decision on who they're going to have in testing. In case you don't know, Lance Stroll had an accident on his bicycle and has got some minor injuries, but he's not going to be taking part in testing. Excuse me. He's not going to be taking part in testing in Bahrain. So they've got a decision to make on who they replace him with in testing. And I was going to have a little conversation about this, and then we'll get on to the last bit of Mercedes news. But who would you pick for testing, right? And I want to throw this out to you guys. Drugovich, is it with an H? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's thingy. Vandoorne, and then I'm putting on an extra one on the end. So there you go. There's the poll, right? So there's the poll. Who would you pick for testing? And I'm going to talk about each option here. So Aston Martin, their official reserve driver is Drugovich. Okay, Drugovich is young driver, and he is the Formula 2 champion. So he is the current F2 champion, Drugovich, Felipe Drugovich. Very, very, very good driver. And then you've got Stoffel Vandoorne, bags and bags of experience. He's been around the paddock a long time. He's been a reserve driver for a long time. And also, he is the current and reigning Formula E champion. So he's a very good driver, and really he wasn't given a fair crack at a drive in Formula One. He was extremely highly rated when he was Fernando Alonso's teammate at McLaren, and I always felt he was given a bit of a raw deal. And then on top of that, I've added Mick Schumacher, because Mick Schumacher is in the Mercedes pool of drivers, right? And I've thrown him in there because he's in there for McLaren as well. and he's obviously the Mercedes reserve driver, and they tend to have this reserve driver share thing. Mick Schumacher might be an option. Now, reports out of Germany are saying that he's not available. He's not available for testing the Aston Martin. But I've thrown it out there because Schumacher, you have to look at what Toto Wolff said for Mercedes. Mick Schumacher has extremely recent F1 experience last season. There is Drugovich and Vandoorne don't. And Schumacher is part of the sort of wider Mercedes family sort of thing now. To me, he strikes me as an option that you might put into the car. For me, for what it's worth, I would choose between, well, if it was Drugovich and Vandoorne, I would pick Vandoorne. And if it was all three, then I would probably pick Schumacher because of the recency of his F1 experience. I think Drugovich would be my last choice, and that is literally because it's testing, and he has nowhere near the amount of experience Vandoorne or Schumacher have. So my choice would be Vandoorne, then Schumacher, then Drugovich, personally. Because when you're looking at testing, no one gives a crap about pace. It's all about feedback, and it's all about that. Schumacher, well, this is the thing. The report out of Germany is that he isn't available. Oh, crap, I've just closed it. Yeah, it's basically saying that Aston Martin could call upon Schumacher, but build out of Germany, which I think is quite a reputable publication, as saying that he isn't available for Aston Martin. But Aston Martin are being asked about what they're going to do. So I'd love to know what your opinion on that is. So we have had 11 votes, and actually I'm really surprised that it's at 45% Drugovich, and Vandoorne and Schumacher are on both 27%. I find that really, really interesting that most people would put the least experienced driver in for testing, which is a curious one for me. He's honestly the last one out of those three I'd have put in. That's not to say he's a bad driver in the slightest. Like, I don't think he is. I think he's a very, very good driver. He's an F2 champion. But for testing purposes, I still think I would put Vandoorne in the car, and if Schumacher was available, him ahead of Drugovich as well. But Drugovich is down. Drugovich is down as the official reserve driver. The F1 official website hinted at Alonso doing the whole lot. Yeah. And we had a little bit of a conversation. I don't know if anyone can clarify this, but me and John and Harry had a little bit of a conversation about it. And it was my understanding that a driver could only do a day and a half in the 3-day test. But I could be wrong on that. They might be able to run all 3 days absolutely maximal. So I don't know if that is a rule. I really don't know if it's a rule. Now, if it isn't a rule, then yes, I can 100% see Fernando Alonso doing all 3 days, 7 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. And I think that is just him. He would do that, and I think he's probably angling for it. He is that guy, isn't he, Fernando Alonso? But there's something in my head that's telling me there's a rule that a day and a half is maximum they can do, because I think it's broken down into morning and afternoon sessions with a lunch break, and I think they're literally allowed morning, afternoon, morning, or 3 of those sessions, basically. But again, I don't know where that's coming from. It's just coming from the depths of my massive head somewhere that's a thing. I thought it was who will they pick. No, it says who would you pick, mate. Lewis says Vandoorne for me, as he would just be more experienced tester if you want to test the car solely and not the driver. Yeah, and Drugovich is already on board, right? Like, they already have Drugovich. And I'm just surprised. I'm still surprised that people have... but there we go. It's not up to me, is it? It's not up to me. The most of you guys have said Drugovich. But that's their credentials and their qualifications. And I just thought I'd throw Schumacher in there because he's being offered up as sort of a pool driver a little bit by Mercedes. So I thought he might be available. Morning, you're right. There is a rule to the limit to the driver to 1.5 days testing. I thought there was, Russ. I don't know where I got it from. I maybe did read it recently, but I thought there was a rule. So they do have to pick someone. And chat, TSKF1 chat, think it'll be Drugovich. I think it's difficult because he is the official reserve driver, but I would pick Vandoorne. Out of the two that they've named, which is Drugovich and Vandoorne wins the testing argument straight away for me, personally. But then again, Drugovich might be a very analytical, technical guy and really good for testing. So I think an experienced driver who's not driven these cars would be a good balance to Alonso. Yeah, probably. But that's that, Paul. Now, what I want to get onto would have been my lead story had I not found it about 10 seconds before I went live. And I know, much to the groans of Red Bull fans everywhere, we're talking, I've got to position this camera a bit better. We're talking about Mercedes. Now, I don't know if I place any weight on this whatsoever, but an article just appeared. I don't have Sky Sports or anything like that, but an article's just appeared, so I don't know when this was said. But Ted Kravitz of Sky Sports, and I like Ted Kravitz. A lot of people, for some reason, turned on him, but I like him. He says what he thinks and he goes with it. But he seems extremely confident that Mercedes have a Plan B car in development. Now, I'm going to read you the quotes. I'll give you what I think, and you guys share what you think, okay? So, Kravitz said to Craig Slater, Rich's Notebook's better. It'll be returning this season as well, straight after the race. Ted said to Craig Slater, they're giving their big idea that was a failure last year one more go. Now, it's crucial to listen to the languages used, but I believe they have a Plan B in production. And if they need to, they can go to a Plan B, which is the Red Bull or Ferrari style of doing things in the middle of the season. At the moment, they're saying, look, we think we've got a proper handle on what went wrong last year. We still believe that our way is unique in the pit lane of having very slim sideboards and is the way to go aerodynamically. And anyway, they say most of the downforce is generated by the floor, which you can't see, but they're saying don't expect anything too soon. I think if they went away without 3 or 4 wins in a season, they'd be disappointed. And asked why Mercedes aren't in a position to fix things now, Kravitz replied, my reading of that was that that Mercedes have got more things coming online. They've got developments of the European season, and we think that they think they're going to work, but maybe the figures are very wrong. So now, this is so vague. This is so vague, but it throws it out there. Now, it's the type of thing I wouldn't say, but it's someone, it's someone in the public eye throwing it out there. It's stuff I wouldn't say. Now, the vagueness, what's making me skeptical about this, right? What's making me skeptical about this, okay, is, the wording is very critical, but I believe they have a Plan B in production. Why do you believe that, Ted? Is that personal opinion, or have you spoken to someone at Mercedes? And if they need to, they can go to a Plan B, right? Which is a Red Bull or Ferrari style of doing things in the middle of the season. Now, this is like proper whataboutism, isn't it? Like, they're the two teams that beat them last season, but both of those have got very, very different things. The very different ways of doing things, the Ferrari and the Red Bull. And to say that Mercedes have got a Plan B car in development now, I'm not sure I believe it. I'm not sure I believe it. But because it's the reason why I'm struggling to believe it is because, as we've seen with other cars, we've seen with the Aston Martin, we saw it with the Haas, where they changed what they were doing. It's not just about side pods, it's front to back, complete different car. And this is the point that Matthews just raised. Could they do a Plan B car with the cost cap? Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Last season, they couldn't fix what was wrong in season. They said that a lot. And you've got to go with the fact it was to do with cost cap. So can they BGS commenting, I'm pretty sure if Vandoorne's called upon BGS, they'll have him. Can they afford to do a second car? Look, it strikes me as well. Okay, let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. Let's do a poll. Let's see what you guys think. Now, it's not unprecedented. We've seen other teams do it. We've seen other teams do it. I'm very high in my seat this morning. We've seen other teams do it. Now, Lewis saying vague, but also rumours of bouncing already at Merck again is also there after a little shakedown laps. Yeah, it wasn't really bad though, Lewis, was it? Like, compared to last season and the bouncing thing, the thing about it is, if anyone can remember back to, well, anywhere pretty much in the season, I'm not thinking too much about the bouncing because the Ferrari was horrific with porpoising. Horrific. And the speed was there. So, a Mercedes has a Plan B, but not a Plan B car. So, do you want to expand upon that? Do you want to? That doesn't mean anything. What has a Plan B but not a Plan B car? What do you mean? Now, Russ says, I think it tells us that Mercedes learn from mistakes and try to ensure it isn't repeated. Yeah. Now, for what it's worth, I think they did a mini project on keep or scrap last year car doing last season and opted to keep. No Plan B. I'm loving the Merc FUD though, hoping they surprise a few. I've said since the beginning I want variety. So if the Mercedes can work, the Ferrari can work, and the Red Bull can work, then that's an awesome thing, right? And also the Aston Martin with their crazy side pods, which I haven't done a thing on yet, but I intend to. Now, for me, this might sound odd. For me, this is Ted Kravitz saying things because it's either going to go away and no one will ever mention the article again, or when it comes to the Spanish round of the championship and Mercedes roll out some conventional side pods on their car, he can go, told you. The vagueness of everything he says there just strikes me as someone saying words that could make him look like a proper expert in 6 months, or no one's going to remember it. They have a Plan B as in aerodynamics with wings. Well, that's what I mean, dude. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. But do they? So people believe they have a Plan B. So 69% of people are voting no, they don't have a Plan B car. For what it's worth, it strikes me as an extremely un-Mercedes thing to do. Now, look, I suppose on Thursday at testing, they might roll out some conventional side pods on their car. We've seen that. It strikes me as a very un-Mercedes-like thing to do, to change everything halfway through the season. It like, that seems a Red Bull thing to do, not a Mercedes thing to do. I'm not saying whether that's a good or a bad thing, But Mercedes always seem to be about the procedure and about doing things methodically and about this and that, you know, and it doesn't strike me as a Mercedes thing to do to just scrap something mid-season. I just think if they were changing the ethos of the car, then it would have happened already. I agree, and it seems to me that they've really matured this design. Mercedes have a car with changed side pods as an alternative, but it's not a whole new car. Well, I mean, where's that from, BGS? Like, do you work for Mercedes? Where are you getting that from? Because if it's from Sky Sports, it's literally what I've just said. But if Merck were worried, they'd have scrapped it before this season. This is how I feel about it. Now, the uncertainty is, will we see anything at testing? Will they roll out a car with side pods at testing? And if not, then I don't think they're... Because the thing that's misunderstood a lot within Formula One's fan base is they can't just walk up and stick some side pods on that car. You have to change the front wing. You have to change the suspension. You have to change the winglets on top of the wing. You have to change the end plates. You have to change the side pods, the floor, the end fences, the fences that go under the car. You have to change the rear wing, the diffuser. You have to change the brake ducts. You have to change absolutely everything for the side pods. So it is basically a Plan B car. That's why I've said it. You don't just walk up and go, right, let's bolt a bit of Red Bull on the side there. And I don't think within cost cap and things like that, they have that. I don't believe that. But I could be very wrong. And on Thursday morning at 7:30, they could roll out a car with side pods and I can go, oh, maybe they do have it in budget. For me, it would be a massive waste of resource for them to have done that. Like John said in the chat, I think it would, in these times with cost cap and wind tunnel reductions and things like this, it would be such a gigantic... You have to play the balance, right? They either change the ethos entirely and go with what is a conventional side pod downwash situation, and put all your you put all your thing into that, or you put all of it into your zero pod design like we see, or you have half and half. So really, you're attacking two issues. You know, you're only getting half the development. And that doesn't strike me as an intelligent way to go unless you're doing it immediately, you know? And I'm not sure that's a Mercedes thing. That's an Aston Martin thing, who are lower in the grid. That's a Haas thing, who are lower in the grid, where it's like, oh, we need something major here. Because even on Mercedes' terrible season, they made it to third place on the constructors, right? Now, people, I'm interested to see. I am super interested to see, and this is all about opinion. Now, I don't think anyone can flat out say Mercedes have a car with changed side pods. I don't think anyone can. We don't know. And anyone who works at Mercedes would never say that publicly on a random little stream like this. But they could have. But back to the initial point and the initial quotes from Ted Kravitz, they're all so vague. Like, I could make a video talking about such things, and I probably will make a video on this later on today, actually. And but when you've got a name behind you and you've got a publication behind you, you can be vague and get away with it, because then they're like, oh, that's insightful, when really it's just saying words, right? It's Prime says it's all smoke screens to lower expectations, but they'll come out the gates flying. Well, everyone always, for some reason, thinks that Mercedes are sandbagging. Even last season, sandbagging Mercedes, and then they weren't. I mean, I know some Mercedes fans who were multiple races into the championship saying Mercedes were sandbagging. I don't think sandbagging has ever been a thing. I think it's a fundamental... I'm not really on about your point, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what testing is. It's not about pace. It's about reliability, understanding your new design, the aero, how the car's behaving. It's not about going fast. It's about understanding the platform that you've developed, right? And everyone always says it's sandbagging, when really Mercedes have always just had this really methodical program for what they do in testing. John is saying BGS, the car tends to work together. Find it hard to believe they have a new car front and back as Plan B. Ian, the fact they stayed all last year and improved it came with the same again is that they're sure it's the best way for them, and I'm glad they did because it's more exciting. I agree, Ian. I like to see variety on the grid, whether it be Mercedes with their car or Ferrari with their car. Aston, their side pods are very different. They're very different. They're crazy. Those kind of thing. Lewis says sandbagging isn't a thing, as pointed out by multiple F1 and ex-F1 sources. Sandbagging is anti-F1 and is anti-money. It literally makes no sense. Indeed, Lewis. I think it's a misunderstanding of, or an ignorance, I don't know, towards the value of like a scientific approach to the aero. Like, they're not putting all the pitot sensors and aero rakes on the back of the car for a laugh. Like, they're measuring airflow and things, and they need very specific conditions, and that won't be at top speed. It'll be how, like, going around corners. How does the air yaw around all the aerodynamic surfaces and stuff, you know? And that, to get that data, it will be about certain speeds and stuff. And it's not about, well, everyone always thinks everything in racing is about going as fast as possible constantly. And it isn't. It just isn't. And I know that sounds really odd to some people, but it just isn't. But there we have it. That was today's news. And yeah, I would have gone with this as the lead story, but I'm going to make a video later on today about this situation and share what I think, and hopefully you guys will get involved in that. I'm going to go and stream on Twitch now on Pit Lanes. I'm going to do some, what do you call it? Assetto Corsa Competizione around Indianapolis. If you want to come and join me, twitch.tv/Pit Lanes. If not, please do make sure you've subscribed and hit that bell notification button so you get notified whenever a new video or a YouTube short comes out on the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you later for more videos, and I will see you this tomorrow morning for more F1 news, 9 a.m. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.